This is the ERP Advisor. Today's episode, the brave new world of ERP security.
Sean Wendell is one of our speakers for today. Sean is the founder and managing principal of ERP Advisors Group based in Denver, Colorado. James McQuiggan, is also joining us today as our special guest. James is a 20-year security veteran and security awareness advocate for KnowBe4, and also a part-time faculty professor at Valencia College. On today's call, we will discuss ERP security best practices and how to protect your valuable enterprise systems. Sean, James, great to see you. So glad to have you with us today.
Glad to be here.
Great, good to see you. October is National Cybersecurity Awareness Month. With all the technology each and every one of us use every single day, whether it be for personal or business use, we know security is important to keep our information safe. But it doesn't always seem to take priority. We know it's something we should be doing, but we don't always take the necessary steps to protect our most valuable investments and information. James, this leads me to my first question. For our listeners today, what are the first steps to take in building a better security culture at your company?
Thank you very much, Juliet. I appreciate being here and looking forward to a great conversation here with Sean.
Thank you.
Security culture, yeah, it's for me, I look at that as that's your next evolution of your cybersecurity in your organization. A lot of people think cybersecurity is an IT issue. It's a technical thing. It's not something I need to worry about working in your organization. So to get culture in your organization, it's got to be something that's got to come from the top. It's got to come from the bottom. It's got to come from the middle. It's something that's going to be involving everybody to be able to grow that culture. And a lot of the times you see security awareness, security training going on. It's a once a year kind of thing, or a once, 1 month out of the whole year dedicated to cybersecurity. I personally will admit that I look forward to the year that we don't need a National Cybersecurity Awareness Month because everybody is doing it all the time. It becomes a part of their culture, a part of who they are in the office, as well as outside the office as part of their normal day-to-day activities. Now, I came out of the energy space. I worked there for about 18 years for a little German company called Siemens. And one of the pleasures I had, or one of the joys, was going to visit power plants and seeing them get built and work on the control systems there. But one of the things that happened every time I went to a power plant was there was a health and safety training exercise. And you were taken through either a written training or a video, whatever it was, but it was important that everybody that came into that environment understood about health and safety, making sure that there were no near accidents, no near falls. Nobody wanted anybody to, be killed because of working in the facility because of an accident. And so that health and safety culture, even in the meetings, you'd start the meeting with a health and safety tip. And I think to get culture into your organization, everybody needs to get involved. Everybody has to have the training, but training is only one part of it, because just because you know about the training doesn't mean you care, honestly. A lot of it comes down to you want to get your employees to be involved. You want to get them where they do care about protecting the organization and keeping it secure, because a lot of the times their actions are going to be more prominent than what they say or what they actually know. So if you can have meetings where you start off and somebody has a cybersecurity tip, then that's a great way to start getting those cybersecurity norms into the culture of your organization, and then letting that work its way outward, and people do it on a regular basis. They go home and they see the phishing emails, or they're using strong passwords or a password vault, or making sure they're not falling for those phishing links. So culture is not a compliance checkbox thing. It is a marathon. It's not a sprint. It's something that has to be worked on with everybody to be able to promote it within the organization. So those are just a few steps to get you going.
So it should just be routine rather than doing something after the fact, right?
Exactly. You want it to become part of second nature. You know, you're going out for a walk in the evening and you come to the end of the sidewalk and you look to the left and you look to the right. You're making sure there aren't any cars coming so that you can walk safely across the street. Same thing applies. You know, you get an email, you want to check the link, even if you know who the person is. It's part of that routine that you go through, that second nature.
Right. That makes perfect sense and leads me to my second question. Sean, so you and I were discussing yesterday and today that we are currently providing guidance on some major cybersecurity incidents that could have been prevented. What can you tell us about that?
Well, the first thing I can tell you, Juliet, is on our Monday morning meeting, when we started, we're going to be talking about phishing emails. I think to James' point, unfortunately, it is a reality that our clients, you know, as we're advising them on the ERP side, as we talked about with you, James, and, you know, you kind of bridge that cybersecurity to, oh, everybody's got these potential problems and what could be, and that's not me. And ERP is different, right? I mean, I probably am describing a little bit of my own honest feelings here of recent until we've had some great discussions. And like you said, Juliet, one of the discussions we had, a couple incidents came up that were very apropos to, unfortunately, this month, right? And it's sort of like one of those things you don't really want to talk about, but it is important that for the folks that are listening to this podcast, I think that was something that the four of us, with Sean Orthman, who produces these discussions, we really wanted the folks that are listening to understand these key points, because it happens.
Right.
So we have two different incidents that our clients are going through that have really made a big impact to their operations. One of them is a manufacturer that we're working with. They're in the process of implementing a very robust industry-specific manufacturing application. I won't get into all the specifics, but the implementation's been going on for a while. The client knew that they needed to get out of their custom systems that run on Windows machines. And so it started a process, did a nice evaluation process, started the implementation. And after a while, they called us and said, hey, we need some help getting this implementation done. So, great, we'll come in and kind of figured out where they were in the implementation. They needed to validate some requirements, so they kind of took a step back and were working through that process. And then a couple of weeks ago, boom, they got hit with a cybersecurity attack where I don't know all the specifics of it, but James, you probably know more. I know you know more than I do. But it sounds like basically somebody clicked on an email that then some kind of code was brought down onto a server on the other side of the firewall within their organization. And then once that code was executed, it propagated across all their machines. And when I say all their machines, I mean all of them, all of their servers, all of their laptops, desktops, everything.
Oh boy.
So it was a Friday, I believe it happened. And then on Saturday was when they discovered this issue. So they spent most of the weekend, of course, trying to remove what they could, and got some of the virus kind of instances. I'm sure there's a more technical term, kind of wiped out, but not all of them. So when they restarted some machines, whoop, all of them got it again. So, I mean, it's really been a really difficult situation. I think our client has been unbelievable in how they've responded. They brought in the right cybersecurity team. I actually reached out to James. I was sending a note to him on LinkedIn. James, I mean, I offer to anybody who's listening to let me know anytime if they need anything. So if they ask me about cybersecurity, I'm asking you, man.
No problem.
But it really was, it was one of those times where it's like, I wish I could do more for my client. So what did I do? I reached out to the expert. And then that client brought in a very specific, kind of a very technical team to diagnose what was happening and get some insights into how to solve it. And then they actually brought in another team, more of a desktop server support company, to basically remove the old devices, put in new devices where needed, as well as clean out and restore the rest of them. So meanwhile, of course, the ERP implementation is like, whatever, you know, we got to get our orders in. We've got to keep the business moving. So, you know, the reality of that particular incident was the business did slow down significantly because of it. Thankfully, as a manufacturing facility, they could keep producing. but now they're writing down their orders and their lot numbers and their tracking IDs and everything else. So the risk is still significant, but they're working through it. They've got the right partners. That's the one thing I've seen, James. You got to have the right partner when you get in this circumstance to get through it. But so fortunately, that one's gone pretty good. And then the second one, which is of a completely different nature, is as you know, Juliet and James, as you've learned about us, we work with a ton of different kinds of clients across lots and lots of different industries, mostly mid-sized organizations that are really, really busy, but need enterprise apps and want an advisor. Like that's us, right? Well, yeah, we'll go in, we'll figure out that industry. And we kind of do. We have tons and tons of industry experience that's very diverse. But one of our segments that we work with are nonprofits. And in the nonprofit space, there was recently one of the more prevalent apps, I won't mention any names, but it's quite easy to find, was hit with a cybersecurity attack as well. So that impacted many companies that are running their application. So this is a cloud-based app that got hit with cybersecurity. So that's really, really interesting, right? Because a company decides to move to a platform, a cloud-based solution. Either they decide to take the application that they've licensed and put it in the cloud, or they're running an application that just resides in the cloud, whatever a cloud means. That's why we hammer the heck out of every vendor to understand what their cloud strategy is. But unfortunately, especially from a nonprofit standpoint, where those clients are usually a little less tech investment wise, that's not something they're putting their money in. They'd rather literally save the world, like most of our nonprofits do, whether it's energy or human services or frankly, bathroom facilities in really third world countries, right? We have a lot of clients that are out there making a difference around the world. So look, we know we don't do enterprise apps well. We're going to pay you, vendor, to maintain and host and secure our instances. And then bam, this particular vendor got hit. So I think as we go through this call, we may even go a little later with this call too, if there's enough content, but I just want to put it out there that this is very, very apropos to every company that's listening, to you folks that are listening to this call, that you really do need to think. I think James said it perfectly, like you don't cross the street without looking both ways.
Right.
Don't invest in a bunch of enterprise apps without at least thinking about what are we really doing for cybersecurity. And then as soon as somebody who's not like James, but who's more technical, yip yap, twack, tack, 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 that kind of stuff, you say, knock it off. Tell me exactly what I need. That's it. Tell me what I need, and then do it. You're going to be better off because you will get hit by a bus. That's what we're seeing in the market. Unfortunately, it's very real.
Yeah, you touch on a couple of things there, Sean. First of all, with that first company, there's a saying we have in the industry that basically goes, there's two types of organizations in the world, ones that have been breached and ones that have been breached and don't know it yet. So, it is rather unfortunate as it sounds. We joke about it, but a lot of the times people aren't prepared for those kind of attacks. And if they are, the ones that are prepared are able to minimize the damage that end up impacting them. Because when you get hit with ransomware in your organization, I hope that you have either cyber insurance or you have line items in your budget, because right now the average cost of ransomware has been going up a lot this year. 2017, when it kind of started taking off, $300, $500, $600 a machine is what they were asking for. Now, starting last year, we're into the hundreds of thousands, now working our way up into the millions of dollars, because what the cyber criminals are doing is they'll get into your environment. And we'll talk about how they do that. But when they get into your environment, they are discovering what organization you are, and they're researching that organization and seeing how much money does this company make every year. They make $1 billion, they make $50 million, they make $500,000, and then they go after a percentage of those profits. That's how they're now gauging a lot of the more sophisticated ransomware attacks. They are looking at the profit margins and seeing, all right, how much money can you really spend? Because your defenses aren't secure enough. So now you're going to have to pay. And that's the mindset that they have. So you need a line item almost in your budget for, okay, can we handle $500,000, $500,000, $1 million, whatever percentage of our profits for having to pay a ransom. On top of that, you're now looking at downtime. You're looking at loss of revenue, loss of productivity. possible damage to reputation, possible damage to employees. Because if you end up losing money because you can't make money, even if you're doing things manually, and you can't bring in the revenue that you're expected, now you may not have a need for all the resources of the employees that you have. And so lo and behold, you may end up starting to, having to let employees go because you don't have, your brand has been damaged because of the ransomware attack. There was a MSP, a managed service provider that provide IT services to companies. They got hit a couple of years ago. And when they did, their profit margin went from 560 million down to like 270 million. It took a significant hit. They still stayed in business and kept going, but they took a big hit. You look back at Target years ago with theirs, people still shop at Target, but they took a hit over that first year. The CISO was let go. The CEO was let go. People lose their jobs over these kind of things that end up coming in, which kind of brings to the second point with the other organization you talked about, where they're using the cloud. And for us, the cloud is just somebody else's computer, whether that's with the giant bookstore in the cloud, Amazon, or you're using Microsoft or whatever other cloud service that's out there. It's essentially running on somebody else's computer. And so when you're working with those third-party companies, you have to be able to do an assessment to make sure that they are following certain cybersecurity protocols and standards, making sure that they are protecting your data. Because every company out there will tell you, we take security seriously. And I have no doubt that they do. However, the question then becomes, how serious are you taking your security? What are you doing within your organization? What security culture do you have within your organization? And a lot of people will define that differently. But one of the important things to do is to be able to go in and do that trust but verify. I think Ronald Reagan said it years ago. Auditors say it all the time. Yeah, we trust you as an organization. You're in it to make money. You want to be profitable. You don't want to get hacked. But what is it that you're doing to make sure that you are securing our data or your applications and you're providing us that service? And so then you start looking at vendor questionnaires and whether how reliable those are, whether you use another third-party product, a governance, risk, and compliance tool that allows you to do that vendor questionnaire so that you can do a proper assessment to make sure that that organization is going to be able to protect your data. Because a lot of the time people don't know what questions to ask. And so maybe that's where you bring in a third party to help you with that. So overall, there's a lot of cybersecurity is in a lot of different aspects, a lot of different facets, whether it's making sure your endpoints are protected, making sure that the data and the systems are coming into your environment are secure, making sure the humans are secure. So,
yeah. So James, with all that said, what would you say is the biggest security risk we face? And can you walk us through an example of how something like that could happen?
The biggest security risk that we face, there's two, and I'm going to the first one is a lot of the time people don't know what they have to protect in their organization. For me, the first rule of security is you've got to know what you have to be able to effectively protect it. If you don't know what you've got, you can't protect it. That's a lot of the times we've seen data breaches that have been going on because organizations are putting data in the cloud and they're not securing it properly. And so the first thing, a lot of the time, they put it out there, they have systems, they don't know about it. Those get hacked and then organizations end up falling into a data breach. The second aspect, and I'll go deeper in with this one, is the human element, us. Phishing is one of the top attack vectors that cyber criminals are using to gain access into organizations. A lot of people, cybersecurity people to say it, I've heard lots of people say it, but they'll say that the human is the weakest link in your organization. Okay, I will agree to that with a caveat, the fact that they are the weakest link because they haven't been educated, they haven't been informed, they haven't been made aware. If you can educate your employees and make them aware of the dangers of what's going on, then human beings are smart. We've got pilots that fly us in airplanes to go from, one side of the country to the other. They're not completely on autopilot. I'm sure most of the time they are. In a car we're driving, because we know how to get from A to B. We're not relying yet on those autonomous vehicles. So the human element is, in my opinion, probably one of your strongest assets that you can have in your organization. Granted, if they're not educated, they're not made aware, then they are going to succumb to those phishing attacks. And so when a phishing attack happens, usually the cyber criminals, they have the very sophisticated ones, and we'll look at them. They have all the same technology and systems that you do as an organization in their environments. They have set it all up with the different email gateways, the different technology devices to block spam, the same antivirus software. They're all running it in their mock environments wherever they are in the world. And they put together a phishing email and they send it through all the different configurations and different systems that they've got. And if it goes through, they go, okay, put that one aside, that one works. If it doesn't go through, all right, scrap it. And they're running through all the different email scenarios to configurations that they can do. So they build up their repertoire of those phishing emails. And sometimes they'll create what we call spear phishing emails, where it'll be dedicated for a specific organization. So a lot of the times they'll use spear phishing if they want to get inside an organization. So if it's, well, I don't know the manufacturing company, but manufacturing companies are big targets for spear phishing campaigns for a lot of the reasons, because the cyber criminals know that if they target them and take them down, they're going to pay the money to get back operational, because without the systems, they're not going to be able to make money. So they'll send in that spear phishing email that they know has worked through the different technology, and they'll send a bunch of them through, and they find the email addresses online. A lot of the time people register for, for conferences. It's very easy to do a search online for the whatever the domain is for that particular company, acmecompany.com. It's very easy. There's tools that are free that the cyber criminals, anybody can use to harvest essentially the email addresses that you can find online. And so they collect up all those email addresses and launch their spear phishing campaign against that Acme company. And they'll make it targeted specific for that company. So for example, let's say the day before or the week before, a new CEO is hired and started working at that organization. They will send a spear phishing email that will pretend to come from the CEO. They may take the Acme company address and create their own fake domain where they might reverse a couple of the letters, because the way our brains read is from left to right. And as long as we see the first few letters and last few letters, we understand what that is. We may not read the middle ones. So they'll create a fake domain, transpose the characters, and send that email pretending it's from the CEO that says, it's my first week here, having a fantastic time, looking out over everything. We need to make some radical changes in our organization to be successful. We're going to make changes to the benefits. We're going to add new daycare in the building, things that will generate either fear, curiosity, or excitement, where the employee would be like, hey, we're going to have a daycare. Cool. I got to check this out. And they'll click on that link and open up the attachment. It sounds too good to be true. It usually is, but they'll click that link. So I'm going to pause there for a second and have you imagine your home. At home, if you were to discover that burglars in the neighborhood were breaking into homes, they were going around back, they were ringing the doorbell, see if anybody was home. Nobody was home. They'd go around back, smash in a window, break in, steal the electronics, and get away. If you had heard that they were doing those kind of burglaries, then you would take the necessary steps to secure your home. You'd have maybe turning on the security system, have motion sensor lights. You could have cameras mounted, maybe even fake ones that just got a little LED. They'll think it's real. Those are the deterrents that if a burglar goes to break in, they will, walk away. They'll be like, oh, no, cameras, oh, motion sensor lights. You could even have a beware of dog sign, something so simple as that, in your front window. And your doorbell, when they press it, you hear the sound of barking dogs, even though you might only own 3 cats. But that barking dog, they go, whoop, okay, I'm not going to break into this home. But you have that awareness so that you take the right steps to protect your home. All right, so on pause, that phishing email that comes in and you click that link, think of your home. You've got all that security on there, all that technology, But if the doorbell rings and somebody opens up the door and lets that person in and you don't know who they are, they essentially are now breaking in to your home. When you click that link, that's the same thing as opening up that front door. You are letting the bad guys in. Unfortunately, you're not seeing them physically walk in the door. You are now connecting to their server in the cloud or out on the internet. And they may display whatever it is, you know, it might be the company website. It could be something where they want you to log in and then they steal your user credentials. But they're going to bring up a web page. All the while, what's happening is a file is being downloaded onto your computer. It's what we call a dropper file. And so it gets downloaded onto your system and then it's taking over your computer, but you don't know it. It's happening all behind the scenes. They're able to execute programs without you knowing about it, and it automatically happens as soon as you visit that website. Wow. What that dropper file then does, will then start looking at the network. What other systems are there? It will also make a callback, what we call to a command and control server or a C2 server. That's another server in the bad guys layer, we'll say, cyber criminals layer, where they're now downloading more information. Because in essence, you've now opened that door and they've permanently kept it open for them to be able to come in and out. They'll get sophisticated enough that they will get in on your network, get around to the different systems, look for the main server that controls all the user accounts, what we call Active Directory in Windows. And they will then get in and create their own user accounts. They'll figure out the VPN or how people connect remotely and create their own accounts so they can now come back in freely without having to come in through that original laptop. When they do a ransomware attack, a lot of the times now what they're doing is they're looking for all the data. They're looking for intellectual property. They're looking for personally identifiable information, PII. And they're looking for all that, whatever they can get their hands on, and exfiltrating it. They're sending it out back to their servers, either during regular business hours when it looks like regular internet traffic, because that's what it is. And so all the data is going out. And then when they're done and they're ready to hit you with it, then they launch the ransomware attack where all the files have been propagated on the servers and they encrypt all your data. They leave the operating system running because they need you to reboot. Sometimes they'll wipe that out so that you end up shutting down. They're taking that extra step to cripple you and hurt your organization a little further, depending on what you do or what they're looking for. What they will leave behind is a note. They leave that ransom note where you have to go and visit a website using what's called a Tor browser, which stands for the Onion Router Network. It's an anonymous network where when you're surfing online, they don't know where you're coming from, but it also hides them as well. And so you go visit their website, you enter in a code, and then they give you the information of how much Bitcoin they want, because all payment is done in Bitcoin. They don't want wire transfers. They don't need PayPal gift cards. They want the money transferred in Bitcoin. And right now, Bitcoin is upwards of $8,000 to $10,000 for one coin. And so depending on your profits, depending on how your organization does, will depend on how much they ask for. The other thing they'll do is then put a time limit on that. They will say, you have 72 hours to pay us. To do any type of backup, data retrieval backup, doesn't take 72 hours. It takes several days. So you are now put in a very difficult position, whether you're the CISO, CEO, but you as your organization have a very difficult position. Do we pay? Do we attempt to restore from backup? What do we need to do next? And if you do decide to pay, if you don't have one, you got to go get a Bitcoin wallet and you got to register for that and you got to sign up and then you got to put money in it. That takes at least 72 hours. I've gone through and done it myself just to have the understanding of it. So what ends up happening is you now have to communicate with the attackers. And some of them have some really good chat lines set up where you can communicate with them and negotiate to say, look, we can get the money, but we need more time. Okay, we'll give you another 24 hours, but they may raise the price. Other times they can be negotiated down. There are organizations out there that will come in when you bring them in, they will negotiate with the cyber criminals for you. A lot of the time, these cyber criminals, they are in it for one thing, money. If they can't get the $15 million out of you, they might take $1 million because the amount of effort and work they've put into this, is only a few hours. Now, a lot of the back end work, developing the code, the ransomware and all that may have taken a little bit longer, but they've used this successfully in a lot of different locations. So they're making a lot of money out of it. They hit the 15 million knowing they can be talked down, kind of like a car dealership. You know, you go in, you got the set price, you want to try and talk them down. And so at that point, once you've gone through and had that conversation and figured that out, then you either pay or you get the FBI involved and you're doing your recovery at that point. But this is like I said, a 3 to 5 to 10 day recovery time before you're back up to 100% that you were originally. So it's never any fun. There are people that I know through other colleagues that there have been people that have worked on these cases and have done like 15,000 of these over the years. Yeah, it's incredible. It's profitable. Phishing works. And that's kind of why that's got to be the number one biggest risk that we face in the roundabout way of that answer for you.
Oh my gosh.
Gosh.
That is scary.
So that's part one. Let me start.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Oh my gosh. Trying to digest that in and of itself is pretty frightening to think. Like
So
with all the information, investment in valuable information everyone has in their business is unbelievable.
So cheesy plug, KnowBe4 website, look for the ransomware rescue hostage manual. Tells you all about it. There's my cheesy plug.
That's a good name.
So.
Okay, perfect. So Sean, I'm going to ask you a quick question as it relates to ERP.
Yeah.
Specifically, what aspects of cybersecurity do you feel are the most important as they relate to an ERP system?
I mean, James kind of laid it out, right? That if your system, quote unquote, goes down, your technology infrastructure, whatever it is being hit. But that also means your ERP. So whether you use it just for financials, you know, being able to pull together information and understand, you know, where your organization is financially, or your human capital management systems. I mean, imagine being hit during enrollment period that's coming up for a lot of our clients, and employees can't enroll for benefits, right? Okay, well, maybe they can wait. We can do it by paper. Okay, fine. But then what about like the manufacturing floor that's trying to track work orders from beginning to end, pulling raw material, adding labor, you know, what's the next step in the manufacturing process? No system, we can still manufacture like the client said. Okay, you know, you can kind of do some mitigatable steps. There are some mitigatable steps, but what about things like order management? When you need your salespeople to go into an application and enter the order, and it doesn't work, and you can't get to your systems. There's no emails, there's no contact lists, there's nothing. So people are stuck with whatever they have to get their job done. I mean, it's sort of like going from, you know, where we're at now with business process and automation to where we were 100 years ago, right? You just write it down. We're not using, you know, rocks and chisels to do things or abacuses to add. You still have your phone you can use for that. But, you know, the efficiency of the organization just went from 100% down to 5%, just like you said, James, that we're not making money anymore. But I think the other impact is, and I've seen this with our client we're working with now, is it kind of rattles people a lot. I mean, your employees, the emotional impact of going through one of these breaches, whether it happens directly to you or to your vendor that is running your accounting systems, just the controllers, the accounting people, the sales people, all these real people that are out there trying to get their job done and now they can't, kind of freaks out, right? It's sort of like COVID, where like, you know, I can't go out to the grocery store, I'm going to die, right? Like the news still kind of pushes that a little bit. There's realities, there's risks there for sure. And I think that's what I like about what James is trying to share with us here. And I hope folks are hearing that, you know, it's not this bleak, crazy world that you're going to die, you know, that your systems are going to get taken over. And it doesn't have to be that way. You know, just like the fake security sign that sits outside of your house, or a sticker, or you do have a security system or cameras, or I mean, everybody's got the little ring thing these days, or the Nest stuff, or whatever it is. Just a couple little things like that can protect one of your assets in your organization. That's one of the most valuable thing, which is your enterprise data and your systems. And I mean, we're going through 8 implementations right now amongst our team. And I think about the work and I think about how hard. There's one client in particular in Colorado where we're like 2 weeks away from go live. And if they got hit by something right now and they got shut down, like the amount of effort that's gone into just getting that software set up and getting ready for go live is just, it just be devastating. Like I'd pay the ransomware myself on that one. Don't get any ideas, anybody that's listening. I got like $5 in my wallet, I think here. It's not Bitcoin. It's not 5 Bitcoins, folks. We're talking $5. But I do anything to help the client do that. They have poured their hearts and souls literally into these software systems and getting the data right. I mean, all these calls we've done for years and years, Juliet, about data hygiene with the little scrubber. Remember the little pushy thing with the spray, and it said like data cleansing, something. It was really cute. Yeah. You know, to this call, to talking about implementation risks and selections and all this stuff. Like we all work so hard to get these systems in place, and to think that some, I'll call them a punk, I want to call them other things, could come in and do some stupid thing like that and be so selfish and just shut down this business they don't even care about, right? They just care about the money. Like it's like ridiculous. And I get it that, you know, not everybody's going to get attacked tomorrow. We don't want that, but come on. I mean, even like I said at the beginning here, after hearing James for 2 seconds, I'm like, oh my gosh, what are we doing as a company with those phishing emails? Like I get them all the time, like all the time. I think we all do. And a lot of them with the Mac, especially, it goes into the junk file, but what doesn't, you know? And I think I know, but do I really know? So, I mean, this is really one area where prevention is just, it's not even prevention. It's just, I love exactly what you said. If you're gonna, from my view, right, our clients sometimes spend millions and millions of dollars on these systems, right? That's just one system amongst all of their electronic files. You know, we have another client's a construction business that has, you know, 10 years worth of estimates and bids and proposals that they have on their network right now. What happens if those get hit? They're old, whatever. The salespeople use those things every day to come up with the new deal, right? Oh, we can't get to that. And all we have to think about is just looking both ways and across the road. Like, okay, an email comes in, or I think there was an example that was on your website too that I love, James. I think it was about Tesla, where a specific person targeted an individual at the organization of Tesla and tried to get in with him and tried to create a relationship to say, hey, I'll give you half the money if you let us do this. And the guy, you know, bless his soul, and I mean this, went to the feds with it, went to his management, and then they brought in the FBI. And they tracked down those guys, the cybersecurity or the cyber ransomware a-holes, I call them, but whatever. Anyway, tracked them down, and then they went to jail for it, and they should have gone to jail. So I mean, so there's great stories here. So again, I think just like you said, James, like your people are everything. I mean, businesses, organizations, I don't care what kind of entity we're working with, it's all about the people. So the more education makes sense. Protect your enterprise assets by enabling your employees to think with, you know, what's the best thing to protect them and the organization and their group. And I think there's hope for that. That's what I would say.
And to add on to that, when you have identified what is the most critical part of your organization, you know, that intellectual property, those personnel records, the invoices, you want to protect that more than anything else in your organization. If you need to add extra firewalls or add different levels or reduce the number of people who can access that, you want to do everything you can to protect that. That's your Colonel Sanders recipe, your Coke formula, whatever. That you need to add those extra layers of protection, because the mindset is no longer how do you keep the bad guys out. The mindset is the bad guys are in your network. How do you protect your data from getting stolen? So if an attack comes in, you have an ability to spot it, contain it, get rid of it. But if they do get in, it's very difficult for them to gain access to your core data, your golden nugget, your crown jewels, critical assets, whatever you want to call them. You want to make sure you've got procedures and programs, policies in place to protect those.
Makes sense.
Well, it's obvious there is so much more we could cover and talk about, and I think we are going to have to do a part 2 as a continuation to learn more, because you are a wealth of knowledge, James. Thank you very much. So I think just to kind of close out today's call, is there anything either you or Sean can share to help us predict or prevent any new types of attacks?
James, what do you think?
So right now, with everybody working from home, a lot of the predictions that I'm seeing right now is the threat landscape has grown tremendously. You know, you would think about businesses, the physical walls of that business really is your perimeter for your organization. With cloud, more and more cloud services, that perimeter gets thinner and thinner, and it's, you know, now it's the cloud and the world and everything else. But now you've got people working from home. You've got them on their home networks. And so the threat landscape has increased even more. People are stressed. People are distracted of working at home. I mean, I've been working from home now for well over a couple of years. And when I first started, the distractions were too much. My TV's down the hall. Hey, I got to catch up on that latest Netflix show. It's like, want to go watch that. You know, your own, but the distractions when you have a family and the toddler wants you to play with them because they know you're home, those distractions come into play and make people a lot more susceptible to the COVID fake emails or the phishing emails that are coming in. You know, you decide to go out and go to a coffee shop and jump on the Wi-Fi there, but it's not really the Wi-Fi. It's some hacker that's running their own. So making sure you're using VPNs. So next year, until we really get clear of COVID and people are back in buildings and in those secure network environments for those organizations, a lot of companies have to consider those systems as almost untrusted. You know, you've got to have, the concept is called zero trust architecture. It's a trust but verify aspect where, yeah, you've got a device coming in, but it's got to be authenticated in multiple ways. It can't just be a username and password to gain access. So the threat landscape's gotten bigger for everybody, for InfoSec folks, and it's a lot harder for them. And it's going to get a lot harder for 2021.
I think, Juliet, if I can add on top of that, first off, I'm not going to be so upset when my bank sends me that ding little text with the code and whatever else, or, you know, sometimes enterprise apps do it. Fine, I'll do it. I'll just copy it in. But, you know, interestingly, from an ERP perspective, almost all of our deals in the last 3 years, let's say, except for one big one, went with cloud-based ERPs, whether it could have been a human capital management, supply chain management, customer relationship management, whatever that packaged application was, patient care reporting, cloud-based. So when you talk about trends and upcoming risks that we haven't really thought through, this thing that happened with this nonprofit app provider really showed me, like, here we are recommending software vendors to our clients. And what if we recommend somebody that gets hit and does the breach? So, you know, we've asked for SOC 1 and SOC 2 reports for years from vendors.
Cool.
But I really think that the kind of the bigger companies, you assume they have in the right security infrastructure, right? And so, okay, trust but verify, that's what you do there. The medium size, it's interesting. I'll just throw out some names. SAP, Oracle, Microsoft. Oh yeah, they're fine. Trust but verify, right? Like, let's make sure. Good. Then you have like medium level type companies like a Deltek, Epicor, QAD. You know, there's lots of different kinds of solutions that are kind of industry best of breed that are, you know, they're tier 2s is what we'd call them. Those guys are interesting because often they run in the cloud in a data center that's not theirs. And so they won't really want to tell you what data center they run their apps in because it's actually a security risk. Like, oh, what's your data center doing? Oh, we're in this data center at this address. Great, let's go blow it up and see what happens to that vendor, right, Dale? But I do think that the savvy CFO, controller, the people that are listening to our calls, directors of IT, CIOs, you got to hammer them, and you got to get the right reports. We have one client that has that is a data center, actually, that engaged us for a selection. They did go to the data center that the very large ERP vendor ran out of to investigate it and maybe do a little reconnaissance. But they did check it out to make sure that all the right controls are in place. So the medium guys, You just watch out for the medium guys. That's all I'm saying. The big guys, probably fine, trust but verify. The medium guys are like, verify, like have the discussion. And if you start to feel like somebody's saying something that's too technical, you say, knock it off. Give me the data that I need, right? Then you have a smaller vendor that maybe doesn't have that big of a customer base, and they're moving their applications to the cloud. You really need to be careful there, because there is a certain amount of cost of business that a software vendor has. And, you know, R&D and reinvesting into the product and building the next functionality set and hiring all the people and the developers, you know, it makes your head kind of spin. But what about the cost of cybersecurity and building that security into a solution? You really need to be careful with a vendor that's a little bit smaller that maybe doesn't have the resources to think through that, in which case you really probably should talk to the CEO, honestly, if it's a smaller vendor. And I'm talking about a company that maybe does 50 million in revenue per year or less, maybe even 100. And you need to look that person in the Zoom eye, and you need to say, what are you really doing to prevent a cybersecurity breach? Like, be honest with me and tell me that. Oh, we have an auditor that blah, 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 we do penetration testing. No, like, what are you really doing? No, listen. I'm paying out of my pocket to have somebody come in and test my network 5 times a year to make sure that we don't do something stupid or we don't pick up on whatever. Okay, cool. Takes 5 minutes, right? But you really want to get that verification from these cloud-based apps. Don't just expect that the cybersecurity is working as you would expect it to.
ERP Advisors Group is one of the country's top independent enterprise software consulting firms, advising mid to large-sized businesses on selecting and implementing business applications, including ERP, CRM, HCM, business intelligence, and other enterprise applications, which equate to millions of dollars in software deals each year across many industries. This has been the ERP Advisor.